bad as it used to be, but there are still people that judge other people for the way of their skin tones or the way that we talk because of our race. So
A bunch of stereotypes about different races that aren't true. People accuse or believe that a specific race does something just because some people do that, not like as a whole the race doesn't. So that's what systemic racism is. It's just stereotypes.
It exists in schools and employment places and just out in public.
Oh, uh, well, I think a prime example that I see of it is like we still have unconscious decisions about like where we live. And you can see a lot of the times, specifically with white people, they'll choose to live outside of a neighborhood that isn't primarily full of people of color.
I believe systemic racism exists highly in today's society. I think it's primarily due to the lack of inclusion for the most part, but I think it's greatly underlooked at. So I think it definitely needs some attention.
It exists all across today's society, from educational benefits, healthcare, from workplace environment, even down to can we get the same amount of food or the same price food or quality of food when we go to our local grocery stores, our package stores, depending upon where you live or where your demographic has been housed, because people of different colors and race, normally they have a lower percentage of getting approved for housing. So they're not going to be able to buy their own home. Their wages and their jobs are drastically lower. Why a black African American man makes 71 cents compared to an American white male to their dollar. So if a white person has a job and is making $1, the African American makes 71 cents in comparison. And them get even lower when we talk about females. So it exists everywhere. I could go on and on.
it can damage us because most of us, like Mexicans, we're called border hoppers and beaners and stuff like that. But most of us have papers and we're American citizens. So not all of us go by, a lot of people go by stereotypes like that or by the Asian slurs and stuff like that. And most of us have papers here, so we're judged.
Because not everybody in the community does what they do. Because first of all, community can be like a whole bunch of people. So then you have certain people in a community who do different things, and that one stereotype can ruin an entire community. Like a bunch of redneck white people kind of ruin white people as a community. And it's just, you have specific stereotypes for each community, that you have bad stereotypes and you have good stereotypes. Like, it just depends. But the stereotype can just ruin how other people think of the community, since that's all you really hear about it. Once you hear a stereotype for a community, you don't think of them as much as anything else other than that stereotype.
Because people are always thinking that a certain person is the way that another person was of the same race, but that's not the case, because your race doesn't define how you act or what you do.
Is one-sided. As an organization or a religion of anything, you only see what your system or a group of people believe in. So I think the stereotypes sometimes get in the way people looking at a view inclusively, as opposed to looking at it one-sided and the way they view things.
They misrepresent it because the stereotypes are usually based off people's opinions, and the people making those opinions are, unfortunately, a lot of times the people that are forcing the stereotypes to actually come to reality and be true. When we're speaking about like people of different race or different color or different gender or different sex, a stereotype can mean everything. We could look at the NCAA tournament this year and the uprising of the female basketball, you know, that they had never seen. Well, this is great. And they got all that publicity and made all that money for everything because everyone always said females can't play basketball, right? But at the end of all that, is Caitlin Clark going to get paid the same going into the WNBA that a male player would get? Absolutely not. The highest paid contract for a female WNBA player is $700,000 a year, while we have male players getting $30 to $40 million a year. So just the stereotype of this is a female can't do it as well as a guy are our stereotypes of, hey, let's bring in another one with education, right? The stereotype that Latinos, African Americans, and them aren't as smart as white or Caucasian males or females. It goes into the play, like, just for an example, if you're an engineer as a white male, and they only have a 7% unemployment rate as an architect, while we have an increase of 10% for African American males that have the same degree that don't have employment. And it's based off the stereotype that the white person will do a better job and can be trusted more than the black person.
Yes, most of us, I have been called a beaner before, or when they be like, you have it in your forehead and stuff like that. Or sometimes I get like stared by white people and stuff like that because of my skin tone.
Personally haven't experienced or witnessed anything, but I have heard of people and know people who have experienced it, and it was very traumatic.
Not just because but people assume, you know, that, you know, just because I'm white, I'm all about America. You know what I'm saying? Like, when they assume that my initials are like US and A, it's not all about that, you know? Like, that's not who I am, and I think that's just a picture.
When it came to my, what we call employee evaluation, as the only black and female on my team, doing my evaluation, my then manager wrote in there that I'm a great employee, but sometimes I can get ghetto. Don't know what that meant at all. I had to fight to get that removed. Not only did I have to fight to get that removed, because it was already published, people looked and viewed at me differently. The word itself, it should not have been entered. I don't think she understood the word ghetto. I think she misunderstood the language of the way that I speak about things. It may not be in the same term as she did. And to me, she misclassified that. But before we recognized that, she had already put it in my evaluation, and it was looked at as if I had a issue with the way that I speak and communicate.
There's many different times that I've experienced it. The first I can give you is as a kid. I wasn't a good kid, so I constantly was trying to survive on the streets, breaking the law, doing things like that, to the extent that I had been arrested and put so many times, that I had so many chances, that as a white person, I was always giving them chances. If you look at the incarceration rates of black African Americans, they would have not got the same chances that I did. And you see that in education all the time. So I can see white students do one thing and black students do another thing, and you're more likely to see the black student get suspended over the white student. That is particularly high difference when we're talking about white females and black females. The black females have the highest rate of suspension for when they do something statistically throughout the country. Another example where you see how the government and how a community can expose and not allow certain races. Just recently, I live on the outskirts of Peoria, in the Peoria city, and we have a huge apartment complex that's in that area. Well, that apartment complex is part of their kids feed the Dunlap School District. So their kids are in that Dunlap School District because they fit into that zoning. Well, an entrepreneur, millionaire wanted to buy that and open that up for housing for low-income people, and the entire Dunlap community went into an uproar and boycotted it and pushed it away so that they didn't have to have lower-class individuals, as they perceive them, live in their community or have to go to school with their kids.
I mean, like today, people believe that certain minorities can do better than others. Like Asian white people are supposed to be smarter, like more intelligent than like say Hispanic or black students. Some are perceived like they're just supposed to be dumber, and some minority, like some black students, take that as they just can't do better, so they just don't try. And it really affects, because if they don't want to try, they just don't put out effort and they don't even care about school anymore, when really they can still do good. And it's said to believe that, oh, Asian or white people, like, they have to be good at school, or they are good at school, because they're going to go on, they're going to be doctors or lawyers or engineers or whatever else. But more like if you have Hispanic kids or black kids, they don't really think like that. They don't have the same, because the education system doesn't move them towards that route of, oh, like, go to college, go to wherever you want. You can do whatever. They have like this set programming almost, where they're stuck at this level and they can't go any higher, because the education system is like, you can't. The system doesn't really care about minority students. They only care about white students, to be honest, because that's all they see going to college or spending all their money on going to education. They want them to go higher while they keep minority students just at this lower level, which isn't fair.
Because teachers automatically assume that certain races are smarter than other ones, or that they pick on people of certain races, they get in trouble more often just because of their color. And teachers aren't often employed because of their race.
Well, in education systems, we can see a lot of the time from students to students assuming that students that are a different race than them might be smarter or dumber than them. And this also sometimes applies to teachers with how they treat students. Like a white teacher might treat an African American student as if he's not as smart because of just the color of his skin. And it doesn't have to be, it's not necessarily a conscious decision that the teacher makes, but it's worked its way into our society where it's unconscious. I think in Peoria, with the level of the expectation levels for education in Manual compared to Richwoods are completely, like, Richwoods, we expect high level education, but in Manual the bar is set down low, and because of the high African American attendance.
I think it's highly prevalent in education system. I think a lot of what we do as people growing up, we're looking for a good education. With a good education, it opens up opportunities for us when it comes to employment, equal pay, and increasing our income. But when you have systemic racism within the education system, there are barriers when it comes to resources. Is something that's been known that when you are looking at the history or the demographic of an educational district, if you see more of color, meaning Black, Latino, Native, you'll see that they actually receive a significant reduced amount of revenue toward that school. Well, we know with no revenue, there is a lack of the material that's needed to give them a quality education, as opposed to those of a white school that is predominantly of a white race. They always get the higher dollar revenue or the distribution when it comes to funding for their education. So systemic racism in education, to me, is one of the top areas that we definitely should focus on. And if I can elaborate a little bit more, also in a disciplinarian area, You'll see that in the predominantly minority or people of color education, you'll see they have a higher suspension rate than that of the white school, and you'll see that their behavior is similar to that of a white school, but the punishment definitely doesn't fit those of the minority type schools. So they lose out on the time of getting a quality education at that point. So I think education is a very high area that is subjected to systemic racism.
By not judging other people by our skin tones and not describing them and like going off their, the way they speak or where they come from, because it's not who we are. You have to go and dig deeper.
I think people can change their mindset on how they view other people and just keep an open mind when they look at certain races and not automatically assume stuff about them.
I think just the overall promotion of like continuously promoting equality and like making sure people know like this is a society we want to live in can help them block out these or be more aware of the unconscious decisions that they're making, so that instead of looking at someone different unconsciously, you're like, no, this is bad, I don't want to do this because they're gonna look at me like this.
So addressing systemic racism, that's very complex. I mean, it's going to take quite a bit. One of the things I do is try to promote in my area is inclusion. I try to consider everyone's background, whether it's a white race, minority race, people of different countries, people of different backgrounds, all of that. So I think for me, one of the top things to look at is inclusion. We've got to be able to understand that one organization and or race doesn't promote all of the way that society view things. So with the education of other race, their background, and including them in some of the policy making, I would say, some of the decision making that is done around the round table, it should be inclusive of as many backgrounds as you can get. And that's where you have diversity. When you have diversity, you have a broader knowledge, a broader way of addressing systemic racism.
It isn't a lack of steps being taken, it's a lack of steps being enforced, right? Like, there's no penalty for someone's ignorance or for someone continuing to be racist, or like holding people down. There's no penalty for it. You see little things like in the NFL, the Rooney Rule, where, hey, I can hire who I want to hire, but I have to interview so many African American or minorities, and then they're still going to hire the same person they wanted to interview in the first place. They're just going to have the other ones as token interviews. So, and there's no way to control that. I guess we can always say that things and problems will change and can become better with education, but will they really? Sometimes these people are not going to change, and it's the youth, it's the younger people that we have to get to earlier to change this from the bottom up, and it will take time. But as long as they're being influenced by the outsider, their community, it's almost impossible to change.